Today we are talking about the snatch. More specifically, how you can get the most out of each session when you are performing the snatch. Whether you have snatch training specifically or whether you just have a workout with snatches in them, I'm going to give you a method that I teach and that I use personally on how I can get the most out of each session. So I'm going to break it down and then I'm going to jump into some examples and kind of show you my routine before I get into some snatching. We all know time is limited. So this means that we have to spend our time very wisely when we're trying to improve on a movement or a skill, like the snatch. The best way to get very good at something is through repetition. But when we're training and exercising or competing, this is very hard because we have to get better at a lot of other things. So you can't just spend a whole lot of time doing more and more and more snatches. So the question needs to be, how can we get the most out of each and every rep? When you're performing strength sets or when you're performing battery work or when you're doing a workout, we want to train and practice good reps. The better we perform these reps and the more good reps that we accumulate will later lead to us improving better in the snatch. Since we don't have a lot of time and unlimited reps, we need to make sure the reps we are performing are done as best as possible so that we don't waste time. How can we get the most out of every single rep? Before we get into too much depth and we get moving, let's review the snatch in general to paint a good picture of what we'll be talking about and why it's important to implement these steps that I'm going to talk about. The snatch requires a lot of stability and mobility. This can make things very difficult when we are trying to be super stable and super mobile. You're trying to have a lot of tension and you're trying to be very fluid at the same time. When you see someone snatch really well, you can just see it. They're moving smooth and fluid and it looks effortless, but they have a lot of tension and are stabilizing a lot of weight overhead at the same time. So this is where it's going to get a little tricky, but this is where these steps are going to be really important. So as you can see in the photo, we're going over the different snatch positions. I like to say in the snatch, there's something called the domino effect, where one thing kind of knocks down and then disrupts something farther down the line. So if someone's overhead and they have a lot of issues with overhead, it might look like it's affecting their lower body because they're trying to compensate. If someone has a tight ankle and they can't really get into a good position, it's going to make it really hard overhead. It's extremely important to be able to be mobile in these areas while still being strong. And as you can see, one small thing could make a lot of things very difficult. This will make more sense when I'm talking about why it's important to go above and beyond and the little extra % of prep. Whether you think you're already really mobile or you're really ready to snatch, you can always just do a little bit more, and that's going to help us get more out of each rep. So when you're going into your next snatch session or anytime you're going to perform snatches, you need to remember these three things: prep, position, and practice. We need to prep and warm up our body, making it as easy as possible to have the most effective session when performing our snatches. Positions. If you want to maximize strength and efficiency, then we need to have good positions. Prep is going to help build good positions, but then we also need to take time to improve those positions before getting under the load. Now we have practice. Once we have good positions or improved positions and we have a really good prep, this is going to be the catalyst for us to have really good training when we're doing practice. Now this is more of an intentional thing and something you need to think about before the session, but when we're out there performing, we're not always testing. We need to train. So you want to practice good reps. Have that in your head. I'm going to practice for my sport. I'm going to practice for my test. I'm not testing to improve the test right now. So think about practice. Just like any other sport, you're going to practice for your game or for your match. Right now, we're under the bar and we're practicing for our sport. Like I said before, it might not be super practical, or you might not have a ton of time to just spend 30, 40, or an hour snatching. But you can always implement these methods right before you snatch and just make it a little quicker, and I'm gonna go over that. For a lot of people right now, they're preparing for their CrossFit season or they're preparing for competition. So I'm gonna give you a practical idea on how I would implement this before maybe doing some interval training with some snatches. So I'm not necessarily working on technique here, I'm working on load and capacity and speed. I'm gonna go over how I would quickly prep, how I would build some positions right before, and then how I would mentally get ready for my practice. For the prep, I like to save time. So for the lower body, I'm going to attack the ankle and the hip at the same time. I'm gonna do some ankle pulses and kind of stretch the hip. So I'm gonna do 3 total sets of this warm up, and I'm gonna start here, and then I'm gonna move to the upper body. All right, next I would hit some shoulder cars on the wall. This helps me warm up the thoracic spine a little bit and work on the shoulder. And I just kind of smoothly move through these. Each side, I'll start slow, get a little quicker. I'll hit both sides for 5 to 10 reps, and then I'll jump over to the bar. And for the third step of the prep, I'm just gonna do some muscle snatches. I usually start from the hang. I'll make sure I get in the hip, press overhead, and I'll kind of just feel it out. And then I'll hit some overhead squats, make sure they feel kind of good. And then I'll repeat that 3 times, trying to get a little more range of motion, getting a little more warm each set. All right, so now real quick, we're gonna talk about the positions. So we don't have a lot of time to do snatch pulls or to do some snatch drops or a lot of overhead squats with tempo, but we still need to get in some quality positional work. So what I do before this, as I'm warming up to my load, I'm just gonna add some complexes or add some positions that I wanna work on as I'm warming up. And I'm gonna show you real quick how I do that. All right, so I have 95 pounds on the bar. I'm getting ready for a squat snatch session where I'm gonna be doing some moderate to heavy loads for fast reps. I'm going to start in the hip, and then I'm gonna work my way down to the ground, okay? I think this makes it really effective for me. This helps me get in some good positions because I think it's extremely important to get in the hip, and I'm still gonna worry and focus on making sure I have a strong lockout. So I'm gonna start with a lighter load. I'm going to make sure I stay in the hip, get a nice hip snatch. I'm gonna drive up, and then I'm gonna hold in the bottom for a minute, and then stand. I'll probably do that for 3 to 5 reps, really feel it out. Once I feel good, I'll add 15 pounds, I'll do it again. Then it'll start feeling a little heavier from the hip, and then I'll work my way down to the knee. So now I've added some load, and I'm going to move to the knee. I'm gonna add in some powers here. Just for example, sometimes I'll do that. I'll hit some powers before I do my squat snatch. It makes me feel a little more powerful, helps me get a little more leg drive, and be cautious about getting into the hip again. So I always like to feel out being in the hip before I start, and then I'll stay in the hip, I'll lower to the knee, hit a power, little pause and stand, reset, I'll go to the knee again. This helps me just feel positions. If I feel weaker somewhere, I'll spend a little more time there in the warm-up, but I'll continue to add load. I'll continue doing that, and as I get up in load, I will just start moving to the squat snatch single or whatever movement I'm doing, if it's a power or touch and go work. Now it's time to implement the practice. I'm going to do every 3 minutes by 4 sets, 2 squat snatches at a moderate to heavy load. I'm considering it battery work, so it's between 70 and 80-ish% today. And then in the remaining time, I'm going to ride the assault bike at an easy recovery pace. This isn't the best time to start thinking about my technique, as in these aren't sets designed to help me get better at the technique. I need to still keep that in focus, and that's what I'm doing with the practice. So I'm practicing perfect reps. I'm making sure every time my hands are going in the same place. I'm making sure that I push my hips down, eyes forward, take a breath, and I go. I'm building my cadence, and I'm practicing what I would do in, let's just say, a 30 reps for time at a heavier load, or a workout that has 5 heavier squat snatches. At the end of a workout, I don't want to think, I just want to go and be able to perform this. And this is how you're gonna start building that. It's almost like visualization, but with the actual bar, you're gonna go do it. So you need to go see, think, and build that intent around the workout, and then go execute it and practice it. Don't just go as fast as you can. You can slow it down a little bit and still get really good practice at it so that you can perform faster later. The next time you're going to have a snatch or even a clean and jerk or any type of squat session or some skill you're gonna work at, try and remember this. You need to prep. You want to be as loose, mobile, and stable as possible. So that little prep took me less than 5 minutes. I can add 5 minutes to my day, and it's not that big of a deal. Then I had to build up to the weight anyway. I had to build up, which people don't do often, but it doesn't take that much time. Set a clock, make it an EMOM, whatever you have to do, but build up and load, and as you do that, work on a few positions. Now my positions are better. I'm a little more warm and mobile, and that might help a lot of other movements as well. And then I practiced, and I got a really good session out of it. So each and every rep, I didn't waste a rep because my ankles were tight, and it took me until the 4th set until I started making good reps, or my shoulder was hurting a little bit, so I wasn't locking out well. That didn't happen because I was warmed up and prepped, and then I worked on the positions. I didn't miss it out in front of me because I took time, as I built up in weight, working on some complexes to make sure I wasn't gonna do that. You don't want the first rep of the workout to feel like the first rep you've done today. That's how you're gonna get the most out of every single rep, and in turn, start building more quality reps and getting better as you progress in the sport. Don't rush through things, even if you think you're super mobile already, or if you think you're really good at snatches. I think I'm fairly good at snatches, and I still do this in my routine and warm-up to make sure that I'm not losing my edge, or to make sure that I'm not getting complacent. People who have a lot of success build systems. This could be a great little system for you every time that you warm up and every time that you get ready to snatch, clean and jerk, back squat, muscle up, handstand walk, whatever it is, you can implement it. It's easy. Just remember prep, positions, and practice. Thanks for watching the video. I really appreciate it. Like, subscribe, hit me up with a comment, and we'll see you in the next one.